Hello, welcome to this AVLAND review of the Onkyo TX NR818 home cinema receiver. We're going to show you around this receiver, its connections, through its setup menus, and give you a little bit of an insight into how to set it up. We're also going to show you its Android control application and give you our verdict on what we think of it as an AV receiver. The 818 features 8 HDMI inputs, which includes one on the front panel. It also has an MHL connection on the front, which allows you to connect up a portable mobile device and play music directly back, or video directly back through it, up to 1080p resolution. Yeah, it's THX 2 plus certified. You can see here behind the front panel, it's got all the sort of connections and headphone socket, and buttons are sort of hidden. There you can see the front USB input. It does have one at the rear as well, and the MHL input, as well as an optical and analog video and audio inputs. The 818 comes in silver and black finishes. It has a quoted power output of 180 watts per channel, although that is only at one frequency of, I think, 1 kilohertz and with one channel driven, so it's not really that powerful as in 180 watts. There you can see what it's like with the lights out, so you can dim the front panel as well as turn off the illumination around the front dial. It has Audyssey Multi-EQ XT32, which is the first at this sort of price point. HQV video scaling, which is very good, it's a very good scaler, and also a 4K upscaling by Qdio. But the HQV really is fantastic for old DVDs and things to upscale up to 1080p. It's a bigger platform and chassis from the models below it. You can see there it's taller, it's deeper, it's much heavier. You know, the amplification in it is a lot better than on the models below. So it really is worth, especially if music's important to you, going up to the 818. Unboxing the 818, you can see here it's got a good level of polystyrene around it. All the accessories are neatly packed away. And it's the front panel is well protected too. Moving on to what you get inside the box, you can see the remote control there, which is a bit better, a bit more functional. Some of the buttons are back illuminated, a bit better than the ones you get lower down the range. Comes with a power cable, quick start guide. Also comes now with a full manual on a CD-ROM as well. What's also good with Onkyo is they give you these little labels you can put on all the channels or all your speaker cables to identify which channel, which speaker goes where into which channel. It's very useful. You get your AM and FM aerials, and of course the Audyssey setup mic. On the back panel here, moving in, you can see the various. It's got quite a lot of connections on it, which is good to see because a lot of people are cutting back now. A lot of manufacturers. You've got 3 coaxial optical and 2 optical digital inputs. A phono stage for a turntable, a moving magnet phono stage. All of the speaker terminals are all full binding posts, they're not spring clip terminals. A rear USB, so you can plug a portable hard drive, the Wi-Fi, optional Wi-Fi module, the Ethernet input, the 7 HDMI, rear HDMI inputs, 2 component and inputs and 1 out, a full set of pre-outs, which is very useful if you want to put on an external power out to improve the sound quality. 2 HDMI outputs, so you can have a projector and a flat panel screen running at the same time. A VGA PC input, although if you've got a PC with HDMI or DVD on, much better picture quality than using VGA, so I'd stay clear of that unless it's just an occasional sort of thing where you've got some old PC you want to put through. But any modern sound video card, you're going to get HDMI, you're going to get the sound and the picture through one cable, so much less faffing around, and of course you're getting 1080p. Now here's all the speaker terminals you can see here. These are assignable in the menu, they have a variety of different things. It only actually has 7 amps built into it, but it can also do pre-outs for 9.1 channels. So you can use them in a variety of different ways. You can use them for zone 2 outputs, zone 3 outputs if you're only using it for 5.1 in the main zone. There you can see as well, this is how you take the bungs out the back for using banana plugs. You can use a banana plug in there, you can see it's hollowed out. That's the easiest connection, and on something with so many terminals as well, it's going to be the best connection on this. Bare wire, you risk the bare wires touching together and shorting, which is not good. You want a nice clean signal that doesn't oxidize up as well. Now I'm going to take the lid off the TX NR818 and show you the different components that are inside it. Now inside here is really impressive. There's a lot in here. You've got two cooling fans, very, very large power supply at the front there that's bolted to the front of the chassis. And this is the main board inside the 818. This has got all the video processing, the sound decoding, all kept deliberately very close to the HDMI inputs and outputs. So a nice good signal path. Moving on the right hand side of that, you can see the main two capacitors. And what I find quite impressive about this amp is that they use copper bus bars to actually power all the amplification circuits. So a good clean power, input rather than using it just on silicon circuit boards. They've gone for something a bit more expensive. All the actual output transistors that are bolted to the main heatsink there, which is the nice silver bit, they've got copper screws on as well, which is a nice touch as well. And this is the big, massive power supply here. It's actually on a slight angle it's set to, and there's the cooling fans. If we move into a sort of side-on view of it, you can see those copper screws better on the transistors attached there, and those copper bus bars running the whole length, powering all 7 amplification circuits, which shows the vertical boards coming up. Underneath there you can see there's more boards in it as well for those different inputs, the analog inputs. So there's an awful lot in this box for the money. It's not just an empty box. So a few things that are made these days, you take the lid off and there's not much in them. Now onto the on-screen menus. Here's the monitor out, where you set the resolution that you want everything to go to. So you can set to 4K, or you can set it to what the source is, pass it through. Pass it through is the best bet. You don't, if it's a high resolution source, just let it go through. If you want to scale it, you can. If it's low inputs. Here's where you assign the different HDMI inputs on the back to each input. So you might want them on, I don't know why you'd want a HDMI input on a phono input, but I don't know. I'm not aware of any turntables that have a HDMI out, but away you go, you can do it. Here's where you do the component, same sort of idea. You can have, you might have a Nintendo Wii, which is the component output, or an old Xbox. You can plug that in there and assign it to one of the game console inputs. Same idea with the audio here. You can have, rather than it coming from the HDMI, you might have optical coming from your something like a Wii or an old Xbox, and then component. You can tie the two up where you want the sound coming from with which video input. Onto the speaker settings. Here we set the impedance. You can set whether you've got 4 or 6 ohm speakers, whichever's best. Now this bit, which is where you set the biamping, or you can set up what's digital crossover, which is a new feature on the 818, and we'll go back to that in just a moment. You can set up whether you want a powered zone 2 instead of having biamping, or instead of having 7.1. What the pre-outs do on the back panel, you can see the little icons down the bottom here of the rear connections, showing you what's powered and what's not as you change the settings. So quite good. You don't have to flick to the manual to find out what it is. It's there on screen. But you don't want to be connecting things while it's powered up. You want to only connect when it's turned off. Here's where you set the frequency response for the different speakers. The Odyssey setup will work that out for you. But if you've got, as a general rule of thumb, if you've got full range speakers, not subsat system, you want it set to full band. The speakers will cross over at the speakers they want. They will cut out the frequencies, and depending on what your sub goes down to, you want that to kick in at whatever sounds best. But have a play around with it. Have a tweak. Don't be afraid to change the settings as you go on. Here's where you say how many surround back channels you've got, if you've got them. If you're using it 7.1 or whether you're using it as 5.1. Here's a few more settings as well for the different channels. Now speaker distance, fairly self-explanatory. This is where you set up the distance. Again, the Odyssey will try and work this out, but there's nothing wrong with getting a tape measure out and doing it yourself. You don't have to use the Odyssey setup, you can do it all manually. You can adjust every single speaker. It goes up in fairly small increments as well. Fairly self-explanatory. Now here's where you set the level calibration manually, or if you feel that the Odyssey hasn't done, it's not quite how you want it to be, you can go in, you can tweak it, you can change the settings for each speaker. Equalizing settings, you can manually equalize the speakers, or you can use the Odyssey to do this. I wouldn't recommend it. Your speakers should sound good. If they're good speakers, shouldn't need equalizing, shouldn't need changing. Here's some of the TX settings where you can tell it whether you're using a TX subwoofer. It depends on what you've got, or whether how far into TX you want to go. But it's there. It's got the settings. You can do this. Now, going back to the what we said, this got this digital crossover feature. This is something that I've never seen on any amplifier. Traditional when you buy amp, it sends the same signal to the treble and the bass on the speakers. So it's exactly the same, just doubled up. So you're using twice the amount of amplification. This new Onkyo at the 818 and upwards, you now get the feature where you can actually send a separate frequencies to the treble and bass, so it's working as a digital crossover. Don't know it myself. It seems a little bit pointless if your speakers have got a crossover in, which all speakers pretty much do. So I don't know if it's going to be of that much use. But in theory, you could have some speakers that didn't have a crossover and use the amplifier as a crossover. Otherwise, I would just say if you want to buy amp, if you're not only using it as 5.1. I'd just set it to buy amp. I wouldn't use that function. It seems to be doubling up on what's inside the speaker anyway. There's no, no way of bypassing it on the speakers. Here's where you set different settings up depending on what the sound format is. So you can say which inputs to choose. For here we've got multiple mono. For Dolby, which settings, what levels you should use and this sort of thing, depending on whether it's Dolby or whether it's DTS. It's quite good. Older AV amps didn't do this, so it's quite a good thing you can do, that you can go in and change all these different settings. Pretty comprehensive. Out of the box, I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's there, something down the line. If you notice that when you watch DTS films, for example, the subwoofer's too loud, you can go in there to the LFE, you can tweak that. But it's something for down the line. I wouldn't worry about trying to get it right out of the box. It's something that's normally will just sound good out of the box, which is what it should do. Here onto the source setup, you've also got the Odyssey in here. You can change what Odyssey settings per input, so you can have it, we've got it set to movie. You can choose whether you want dynamic EQ on or not, or dynamic volume, so it increases the volume up and down, tries to keep the volume at the same level, depending on what the source is. Here's where you can actually adjust the volume, so if you find that your satellite is way higher than your Blu-ray and you don't want to change over and suddenly it gets really loud, you can change that. Here's where you set the lip sync. So if you've got any problems with lip sync between your display device and the sound coming out, there's an error, the sound is slightly ahead of the picture, you can delay the sound to match. A lot of televisions have a lot of video processing in them now, and that can delay the picture, especially when you go through an AV amp, because the television's already delaying it. Here you can set the setup, change the names on different inputs, and these are the picture adjustment settings that the Onkyo has as well. As part of its ISF abilities, you can change an awful lot of different things. I personally wouldn't recommend this. I'd have it all just set through. Your television is normally the best place, or your projector is the best place to adjust these settings, but it's there in case it isn't. You can adjust it. Here is where you select which audio input you want, whether you want it to be HDMI or coaxial, if that's been assigned to the input you're on. Here's the listening mode presets. This is where, when you switch to, say, Blu-ray, you can set it to be direct, pure audio, whatever the last thing that you used, what it is depending on the source. So if you're getting a 2-channel source, a Dolby Digital source, you can adjust how it's processed automatically without having to change it every time. This way you change the volume to count up in -dB. That's what we've just changed to there to relative. That's how we'd recommend, and we'd also then recommend that you never turn it above 0 dB. And you can actually specify that here, and we're actually setting it so it can't go above 0 dB because that is full power. Beyond that, we'll clip the amp, potentially damage your speakers if the source coming in is at 0 dB, which most sources are now. The reason it goes beyond that is in case you've got something very, very quiet that you want to boost. But in the main, you don't need that. Here's various different bits of hardware setup. In the HDMI, you can things like turn the HDMI control on, so you can control your television, and vice versa. You can control the amp from something with CC. Generally, hit and miss whether it works very well or not. You can also change where you want the position of the Insta Preview feature. This is the network settings. You can specify a manual IP address if you want, or pick one up from your router. If you're having any problems with networking, it's the first thing to go to, is to go in and manually specify an IP address. Don't let it pick one up off your DHCP, so that could be causing conflicts. Specify a manual one. It does resolve a lot of network problems when you have issues. You can change the remote control mode if you've got more than one of these in the room, so they can be independently controlled. This is a neat feature of all Onkyo receivers pretty much on the market. You can use the remote control to control other bits of equipment, and in this menu you select what those bits of equipment are, and it actually transmits the codes to do that back to the remote. Most of the manufacturers have a similar feature. You have to go to a code book and look up the codes. This is much quicker and is a lot more convenient and easy. You don't need the instruction manual to hand, and then they can update it with software updates as well. This is where you lock the setup so no one can play around with the settings. This is the Insta Preview, which allows you to see what's going on different inputs. And also here's the on-screen menus that you can see there, the preview of the Blu-ray input. And then you might have, for instance here, we've got a PlayStation hooked up. You can see the PlayStation's hooked up. These are also the menus here that are overlaid. This is another menu where you can change things on the fly while you're watching a film or watching television. You can change various different basic sort of settings. So you can change the bass and treble, the subwoofer level, center level, that kind of thing, and select. You can see various different things like different information and that sort of thing. So here you can see you can change the videos. So if you want it to be 4:3 or full, generally it should be fine and work with most things just in auto. And then you've got different. Few different little things. So you've got picture mode where you can adjust the brightness and this sort of thing whilst actually seeing what you're doing. Again, I'd leave this to your television. I wouldn't have it in your amp. Information here, it shows you what signal's coming in, what it's doing, how it's outputting, how it's processing it. Quite useful. Again, a 720p, we're outputting 720p. And then as you can select the different listening modes rather than looking at the remote. You've got it here in this menu. You can flick through, you can change it to Dolby Digital, all channel stereo, whatever it might be, Pro Logic. It's there. You can play around with it. Another function here of the Insta Preview, moving on, is in another menu. There's three different menus. This is the home menu button you press to access this. You can jump straight to networking, straight to USB. You get to the setup menu and you can update the firmware in this menu as well. Don't know why they didn't put this into the actual main setup menu though. It seems a bit odd that it's in this home menu. And here's the actual Insta Preview where you can see all the inputs connected, or some of the inputs, what's going through them at the time. It shows you little thumbnails of what's going on, which is, again, I think fairly unique to this amplifier. I've not seen that on anything else. It's a bit gimmicky, but it's something. Now, onto the Odyssey XT32 setup. This is the first menu you get greeted with when you set it up. It wants to know what you're doing, whether you're using the digital crossover function, whether you're using biamping, or just normally set up. Similar to what's in the speaker setup menu, but it wants to know that first before it goes and actually starts. You start with the actual microphone. Now the microphone needs to be placed roughly where your head's going to be, where at listening height level. So normally the best place to put it is on the back of your sofa, in the middle of your sofa or your chair where you're going to be listening. It asks you to adjust the subwoofer level on the subwoofer itself to 75 dB, and then it starts the actual quick start or calibration, or the full XT32. Now we've edited this down a bit because it would go on for too long a time, but it goes through all the different channels and it measures the different levels. It produces a tone to see whether they're connected, whether the phase is correct, to measure the frequency, to measure the level, the distance. You can see it. It takes a lot longer than we're showing it here. We've cut it down. It probably spends at least 10 seconds on each channel trying to work out whether it's connected or and the different levels. It also can do equalization of each channel as well. These are all different options you can play with, and at the end of it, it will tell you if there's any problems. You've got 3 listening positions as well, so if you've got more than one person in the room, you move the microphone around and it does the same thing again. So again, it takes quite some time, and we've cut it down. Here are the results. It's showing the frequency response it thinks the speakers can respond to, and then it saves the information, and that's it. It sets it all up for you. We don't use this ourselves. I mean, XT32 is the best one on the market at the moment. We don't use this. We set them up manually, but it's at your discretion. Play around with it, see what you think. Here's the networking menu. You can move around them so that they're clumped together, the ones that you use the most. So here we're using DLNA, VTuner, and this home media menu. This is new to the new feature on the 818 that we've not seen on the lower models. This lets you browse just a networked drive. You don't have to have DLNA running. So you can just have a NAS drive or a Windows, what's called Samba networking. You can just browse your files. You don't need to have tag information on them. So that's quite useful if you've stored your music as WAV, because WAV files don't natively support tags to give the artist and the name. So here you can just browse your files, play what you want, away you go. It'll play the music. Something I've been wanting to have on amps for a long time. It's a bit frustrating. You either have to have DLNA enabled, you have to have DLNA server enabled, or you have to have an operating system that supports it. If you have a NAS drive, you have to have DLNA on that. This solves all that. You just have a networked shared drive, and you can play your music back very quickly, very simply. It's not to everyone's taste. Some people like to be able to browse by genre, by all that kind of thing, by artist. You can't quite do that unless your files are arranged in that way, but we've arranged them there by artist and album, and so it does make it quite easy to navigate. Here's the actual DLNA menu. You can see here we've superimposed what's going on the front of the screen of the actual 818. So this is where you could browse by album, by artist, but you do have to have DLNA running. You can go here, we can see we're going in by artist. There are benefits to this. You could have your music stored on multiple different places on your computer or drive in no particular order, and DLNA gives it order, gives it an ability to do that. We're showing you here that it's we're going to show you playing a FLAC file, and this is recorded at 192 kilohertz FLAC, so it's a very high bit rate, very high quality. It also will pull, depending on the DLNA server, again, not all of them support FLAC tags. This one does. This is mini DLNA we're running. It will, with the right folder names, pull the album art across as well. If you press the display button on the remote, you can see the frequency response and the bit rate. You can see there it's nearly 5 megabits per second. Moving on, we're going to show you the Android control application, which can be installed and downloaded for free. It's very, very similar as well to Apple's control application. Looks pretty much identical. The main difference between the two is that the Android one has the ability to stream music to the 818 without having to actually run DLNA. So any music stored on the Android device can be streamed to it, which we'll show you in a minute. But you've got all the basic settings here. You can change input, you can control things if they're CC enabled, so HDMI control. You can change the bass, treble. You can adjust the settings for the zone 2 and zone 3, so very useful if you put speakers in another room. You can control all this through this, use this as remote. You can access the V-tuner, which will show you here, which is thousands, it would seem, of internet radio stations. We're going to go for some here in the UK. We're going to go for a BBC one. And it brings up various different ways of searching. We're searching by locality. I'm just going to put up a BBC one. It even brings up the icon, the picture logo of the radio station, which is quite good. You can access all the other different streaming abilities here, including the DLNA server. Same as you would through the actual interface, really, of the amplifier. You can also browse folders the same way as we were showing you. It's got that feature you can go through. I think you do have to have DLNA enabled, though, to be able to do this from the Android app. I don't know if it can just do it the same as we showed you through the amps interface from a shared drive, but it's the same sort of idea. On both the Apple app and this, it does bring up the album artwork as well. Again, if it's stored in the right way, if it's the right name. Here's where you actually can directly stream, so no DLNA server running on your computer or an ASBox. This is music we've put on the Android device. You press the little Android robot down the left-hand corner, and you can just stream music directly to the Onkyo. You don't need anything else installed anywhere. You just have the music on that. So very similar to Apple AirPlay. Now, onto the pros and cons of the TX NR818. Sound quality. First and foremost, it sounds brilliant. It just sounds really, really good for music and movies, detailed and a sort of warm sound. It also has a vast array of features. Nothing else at this price point has Audyssey XT32 currently. It has that HQV scaler and 4K scaler, lots and lots of inputs, and also very high build quality. Things like those copper bus bars that I showed you. The internals of it, and the actual whole weight of the unit. It's a hefty unit to move around. On the downside, it doesn't have Apple AirPlay, but if you don't have Apple, that's not an issue. Even if you do, you can run DLNA, you can use it in that way. You don't have to use AirPlay at all. If you've got an Android device, it does the same functionality. You can stream music from the Android device directly to it and play it back. The other sort of downside only the real thing I would pick at is that the Android app doesn't change depending on whether it's a tablet, so it's designed really for a phone, and it could be a bit better laid out and have a bit more functionality. I would like to see it, more buttons on it, more detail than it currently has. It's good for basic functionality, but it's not going to replace using the actual remote control. I would like to see that. It more intuitive to use, but really a minor grumble. It is a fantastic amplifier for the price. That's the end of our review of the Onkyo TX NR818. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more information, the specifications and things like that of the 818, please visit our website avland.co.uk. You can also purchase it on there and see more video reviews of other products. Thank you very much.